50 years ago, a man calling himself Dan Cooper, later known as D.B Cooper, pulled off one of the most incredible heists ever. On November 24, 1971, he hijacked a plane, demanded $200,000, and escaped by parachuting out, disappearing without a trace. This all happened on Northwest Orient Flight 305, a Boeing 727 flying from Portland to Seattle. What started as an ordinary flight quickly turned into a legendary event when Cooper, who seemed like just another business traveler, revealed his true plan. Even today, investigators are still puzzled by the mystery of D.B Cooper, who he was, how he pulled off the heist, and how he got away. Although they have a good description of him and even a DNA sample, big questions remain. Where is D.B Cooper? Who was he? And did he survive the jump? On November 24, 1971, a man named Dan Cooper bought a one-way ticket for a short flight from Portland to Seattle. He boarded Northwest Orient Flight 305 and sat in seat 18C. It was a quick 30-minute trip and everything seemed normal. Cooper looked like any other passenger, dressed in a black tie and white shirt. He seemed like a business traveler with his briefcase. Like many people back then, he lit a cigarette and ordered a bourbon and soda, calmly drinking it as the plane took off. Cooper looked like an average guy, as the FBI later described, a white man, about 6'1" tall, between 170 and 175 pounds, age mid-40s, with brown eyes and black hair, neatly parted on the left. At one point, he waved over a flight attendant, Florence Schaffner, and gave her a note. Thinking it was just another businessman flirting, she tucked it into her pocket without reading it. But Cooper leaned in and calmly said, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a Schaffner opened the note and saw a terrifying message. "I have a bomb in my briefcase. I want you to sit next to me." Feeling anxious, she sat beside Cooper and asked to see the bomb. Cooper, still calm, opened his briefcase to reveal wires, a battery, and what looked like dynamite. "I want $200,000 in cash by 5 p.m., Cooper said calmly. "Put it in a knapsack. I also need 2 back parachutes and 2 front parachutes. When we land, have a fuel truck ready to refuel the plane. No tricks, or I'll use the bomb," Schaffner told the pilot, but the other passengers were still unaware of the danger. Bill Mitchell, a college student sitting across from Cooper, remembered the pilot mentioning engine trouble and saying they needed to circle to burn off fuel. The pilot asked the passengers to move to the front of the plane, but Mitchell stayed in his seat, not realizing what was going on. Later, he admitted that he felt a bit jealous seeing the stewardess paying so much attention to Cooper. "My ego got the better of me," Mitchell admitted in 2019. "It bugged me that the flight attendant was focused on this older guy in a suit, smoking, while I, a University of Oregon sophomore, was sitting right there across the aisle, and she didn't even glance at me." Though Mitchell had no idea what Cooper was really up to, he later helped describe the man's appearance. When the FBI launched their investigation, Mitchell and the flight attendants helped create the suspect's sketch, as the other passengers hadn't really noticed him. As the plane flew in circles for about 2 hours, officials on the ground hurried to meet D.B Cooper's demands. The plane landed in Seattle at 5:39 p.m., and the airline staff approached Cooper with the money and parachutes. The first 2 parachutes were provided by McCord Air Force Base, but after getting them, Cooper requested 2 more. He might have thought the military chutes wouldn't work for his plan since they opened after a 200-foot fall. The second set of parachutes came from a nearby skydiving center and were designed for sports, allowing for a free fall of thousands of feet before opening. At that point, Cooper released all 36 passengers and let 2 crew members go, including Florence Schaffner. He then told the pilot he wanted to fly to Mexico City. Since the plane couldn't make the 200-mile journey without refueling, Cooper and the pilot agreed to stop in Reno along the way. Before takeoff, Cooper made several specific demands. The plane needed to fly below 10,000 feet, keep the wing flaps at 15 degrees, maintain a speed under 200 knots, and leave the rear door open. As the plane took off around 7:40 p.m., several Air Force jets followed at a safe distance. As the cabin grew cold, Cooper sent the crew to the cockpit. The 4 crew members later reported that the temperature dropped below 0. At 8 p.m., a warning light went off in the cockpit, indicating that the rear air stairs had been lowered. About 15 minutes later, the crew felt a sudden lift from the back of the plane. They huddled together, shivering for nearly 2 hours. When the plane landed in Reno around 10:15 p.m., local police and the FBI quickly surrounded it. They boarded the aircraft and searched every corner, but found no sign of D.B Cooper or the stolen money. Authorities were convinced the hijacker couldn't have escaped without being seen. All that remained were 2 parachutes, Cooper's black clip-on tie, and an unsolved mystery. D.B Cooper had apparently vanished into thin air, leaving authorities baffled. None of the fighter jets following the plane had seen him exit. Initially, the FBI felt confident they could track him down. They had a name, a physical description, and some details, but they quickly realized they had far less information than they thought. They soon discovered that Dan Cooper was not his real name. To complicate things, the media mistakenly reported the hijacker's name as D.B Cooper, and that name stuck. Undeterred, the FBI threw themselves into the investigation, launching the Norjack probe, short for Northwest Hijacking. Tips started coming in, and Ralph Himmelsbach, the lead agent on the case, recalled having a long list of potential suspects. Real good ones, real poor ones, a lot of both, and many in between, he said. However, after 5 years, the FBI hit a dead end. By that time, they had looked into over 800 suspects, narrowing it down to just 24 that were worth pursuing. By 2011, the FBI's case file had grown to over 40 feet long, yet no clear answers emerged. Meanwhile, D.B Cooper's story fascinated the public, leading to songs, movies, books, and even inspiring the character Dale Cooper on the TV show Twin Peaks, whose full name is Dale Bartholomew Cooper, or D.B Cooper. Although several notable suspects came up over the years, none were ever charged. 5 months after D.B Cooper's disappearance, a man named Richard McCoy jumped from a plane over Utah with $500,000 in ransom money. He was captured and sentenced to 45 years in prison. Initially, he was considered a suspect in the Norjack case, but he was ruled out because he didn't match the witnesses' descriptions. Another main suspect in the D.B Cooper case was Robert Rackstraw, a former Special Forces paratrooper who had the skills to survive a jump from a plane at night. Although the FBI cleared him of suspicion in 1979, many people still doubt his innocence. Filmmaker Thomas Colbert has been investigating the case independently and believes there's evidence connecting Rackstraw to the hijacking. He points to several letters that are said to have been written by Cooper soon after the event. Colbert also suspects that the FBI might be hiding information about Rackstraw's possible connections to the CIA. On the other hand, Jeffrey Gray, who wrote the popular book Skyjack, argues that Rackstraw was never a serious suspect and doesn't include him in his research. In 1980, an 8-year-old boy camping near Portland found bundles of worn dollar bills totaling $5,880 by the Columbia River. The serial numbers matched the ransom money given to D.B Cooper 9 years earlier, making it the only solid evidence found away from the plane. Years later, there were claims of finding pieces of a parachute, but it's still unclear if those claims were ever confirmed. In 2001, the FBI took a DNA sample from Cooper's tie, which helped rule out another suspect, Dwayne Weber, who had claimed to be Cooper on his deathbed. Later, a magazine article named Kenneth Christensen as a potential Cooper, but he didn't match the physical description, even though he was also a skilled paratrooper. Larry Carr, a Seattle case agent, later suggested that D.B Cooper was probably not an experienced skydiver. In 2007, he explained, "We initially thought Cooper was a seasoned jumper, maybe even a paratrooper, but after a few years, we realized this wasn't the case. No skilled parachutist would jump in pitch-black darkness, in the rain, with 200-mile-an-hour winds while wearing loafers and a trench coat. It was just too risky." In 2016, the FBI announced that it would stop actively working on the D.B Cooper case. In a press release, they explained, "After one of the longest and most thorough investigations in our history, on July 8, 2016, the FBI redirected resources from the D.B Cooper case to focus on other investigative priorities. Although the case is no longer active, the FBI still wants to hear from anyone who might have specific physical evidence, like more of the ransom money or parts of a parachute. They encourage people to contact their local field office. At the same time, amateur detectives and independent researchers, often called cooperites, continue to look into the case. They collect all the information they can find and even host events known as CooperCons to discuss theories and the mystery itself. It's also possible that D.B. Cooper didn't survive his jump and took all his secrets with him. The truth may remain hidden, especially since the case is now inactive. If the mystery is ever solved, it might end up being more ordinary than people expect. As Carr notes, it could simply be that someone remembers an odd uncle who holds the key to solving it.